There are a few colder parts of Arizona, but in Phoenix, Arizona, no one, if you ask somebody what is a block heater in Phoenix, Arizona, I don't think many people would have even a clue what that is. They would just say, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we wouldn't get from A to B up here if we didn't have those.
Yeah. Well, so I, for whatever reason, I have some speaking gigs over the next 2 months, and one of them is in Duluth, Minnesota, which is very cold.
Oh yeah.
Then I have one in Toronto, which is very cold.
Yeah.
Then I have one in Dickinson, North Dakota, which is very cold. And then Denver, Colorado, which is very cold. So the whole time, I'm just going to be traveling to very cold, not that beautiful places this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know how to pick them. You could have scheduled those in the summer, maybe.
That's what I'm going to the people in Duluth, I'm going to be like, hey, next time for whoever's on the committee planning this event next year, go to like Scottsdale or St. Petersburg, Florida, or there's a lot of other places we can do this, guys. You don't have to do it here. You don't have to do it here. You can take your spouse, you go to Scottsdale, you hang out by the pool during the day, you meet during the evening. Life's grand.
I think it's an easy sell.
Yeah. Do your parents stick around in the winter?
Yeah, for the most part. They usually go somewhere warm for a week or two.
Yeah.
Whether it's Hawaii, they used to go to Lahaina.
Oh, yeah.
But we know that that's not really a hot tourist location right now.
Sure.
So maybe Florida or something this year.
Yeah. It's friend of mine, Jason, he'll be here in a few days, and he lives on Maui, and runs a company doing the cleanup. Some of the cleanup.
Oh, that's the Truex, right?
No, that's Chemo. And Chemo's doing,
okay.
Chemo's doing some of the. There's a lot of companies working in Lahaina with how much work there is, but I think, they just started to wrap up hazmat. They're now into actually cleaning up, which is, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it's good that they're making progress. But it's just going to be a long road. It won't be the same it won't ever be the same, but it's going to be years and years and years and years before that place is even back on its feet, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Oh, and didn't I hear that there's that one giant tree there? Didn't it survive? You know the one?
I think it did. Yeah,
It took a beating, but I heard, this was way back when it all kind of happened, but I heard that it was still alive.
Yeah, they did a, I feel like they did some kind of like documentary on it about how it has like this one little leaf popping out of it, or it did, and they're like, oh, it's alive. Like that was one of the big concerns. Is it's this gigantic tree. It's been there forever, like this historic landmark. And it's, I guess, still alive. I don't know. I'm not much
there's
of a
some
tree
hope.
guy though. There's some hope. Yeah, no, there's plenty of hope. It's amazing how resilient people are, and Chemo has been a big part of that. So.
Oh yeah, I've been following.
Isn't that crazy though, with social media, how you can, follow people that are there, and so while you get all this information from all the media sources, you'll get a totally different stream of information from somebody living it every day.
Yeah,
and it's so valuable to have somebody there. For anything really that can actually speak to what's going on with their personal experience, and not that that's like the right perspective or the only one, but it's so cool how social media gives you the ability to have that for the first time really ever.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's not being filtered or anything. It's just raw, day by day, minute by minute, kind of a screenplay of what's really going on.
Yeah, it's amazing. But I guess that brings me to what you're doing. I love following along with what you're doing. It is you do such a nice job bringing people along. I love being, I think that's one of the most compelling things about what you're doing is you're building these mini worlds, but you're not just like, ta-da, here it is. You're making people part of the process along the whole way. Like
exactly.
When you're buying the models and when you're tearing them apart and you're making them, you're weathering them. It's so neat to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, for me, the product is cool, but like I enjoy the process. And so, I thought, why not share the process with everyone else? Maybe they'll care. And
Yeah,
apparently
well,
a couple people do, more than I ever imagined would.
dude,
It's kind of
more
blown
than a
me away.
couple, more
Yeah.
than your stuff is blown up. I was looking at it the other day. I was like, damn, you're reaching a ton of people with what you're doing.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. Like back in the day when I would build something as a woodworker, I would post it and I'd get like 10 likes and 6 comments from friends and family on Facebook. And that's what I
Yeah,
was used to.
yeah,
Like, so
yeah.
now like social media is just a totally different animal these days. I don't have to tell you that, but it's crazy to me.
It is. Well, I I bought this. You have these funny experiences with social media. I bought a just like some small holster for a 9mm because we can have those in America, unlike
Oh
Canada.
yeah. Yeah, you guys are bad.
We can have those, and I get the package delivered, and it's the guy that owns the company, and on the invoice says "Love following your page," and I was just like, "Oh, it's so funny!" I just found this totally randomly, nothing to do with social media, and here we are having this connection because of social media. How funny is that?
Yeah, no kidding, hey?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Um, you started though woodworking, and like you said, what was your first what were your first woodworking projects? How'd you even get into models to begin with?
Like, so back in grade 6, you can pick from a couple of options. I wanted to go into art class. Art class is full, so I got put into shop. I was kind of pissed off about it at the time,
Yeah.
but fell in love with it. And the first thing we made there was on a scroll saw. I don't know if you know what a scroll saw is, but it's kind of like a table mounted, really fine jigsaw. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would cut these intricate animal shaped puzzles on the scroll saw, and I would give it
Uh-huh.
to my mom or my aunt, and it was really that's where I really fell in love with it.
I see.
And so I asked for a scroll saw for Christmas. My parents are really supportive; they're awesome. I got a scroll saw, and eventually I kind of get into building these scale models of construction equipment.
Okay.
Um,
That's but that's pretty cool of your parents to get you a saw. I mean, I guess your family's been in construction, so they're a little closer to blue collar than at least mine are. But if I asked my parents for a scroll saw when I was in 6th grade, they'd just be like, "What are you talking about?" And then they'd
yeah,
buy me another Lego set.
yeah. I was a big Lego kid too,
Yeah.
but my dad he's always had a little shop, and he had some really basic tools. Um, but he didn't have a scroll saw, and that's what I wanted. So they got me the scroll saw. It was an entry level machine, not the high end one by any means.
Yeah.
And because they don't know if this kid is serious or if it's just going to be a fad, is he really going to use it? So they get it for me, and within a couple of months, I burnt out the motor because I used it so much.
Wow.
So and that was the
Wow.
beginning of it all. From there, every birthday or Christmas, I'd want a new tool. Maybe I want a chop saw. My twin brother, he wants an iPad, but I want a
Sure.
chop saw so I can cut straight pieces of wood, which I can't do on a scroll saw. So,
Uh-huh.
and so my
Um,
workshop kind of grew from there.
and so you started building these construction models, but then they started to get pretty elaborate because I remember when I visited the office like 2 years ago. It was a while ago
Yeah,
now.
yeah, about that.
You pointed the first thing you see are some of your models in the office, and you pointed out like, yeah, that I made those back in the day, and they're pretty intricate. They're pretty phenomenal for
Yeah,
being models back in the day.
yeah. Like some of those models, like I started off with, you could buy these blueprints for the first one I bought was for like a cat excavator. I didn't know my model types or anything at the time, but looking at it now, I can see it's like a Cat 225 or 235 excavator.
Uh huh.
Bought the plans for that, um, and then got home with my dad and opened up the plans and looked at it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how the hell I'm going to build this. Like, I don't have wood that thick. I don't know how to make it that thick. I don't know how to cut this. And so at first, it was super like overwhelming. And I guess eventually, I built that model excavator, and then I built a couple more from the same company that made those plans, and they're pretty easy to follow after some time. But then I wanted to make other pieces of equipment that there were no plans for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into designing my own models. So I built that big Liebherr was an LR 1300 crawler crane, and I always get fixated on things, and for some reason that crane just grabbed me, and I had to
Sure.
build it.
Yeah.
And so that was in grade, I think, started grade 9, finished in grade 10.
Really?
And then, yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it's pretty tall. I feel like I remember it being as tall as me, or if not taller.
Yeah, it's the luffer on it is angled down so it fits in the lobby of the office, but fully extended, it's 13 feet.
And entirely out of wood.
Entirely out of wood. Like I walk past that thing and I'm scared to look at it because I can't believe it's still standing, and I'm just waiting for the day it crumbles.
That's
like
incredible.
a stack of dominoes. Like, yeah.
And at this time, I know you're still working in a garage, but were you just in your parents' garage, or what did that look like?
Yeah.
What did your shop look like?
Yeah, my shop was just a corner of my dad's shop. And like man, that guy put up with a lot of shit because like I made a mess. I didn't clean up after myself. And even if I was cleaning up the stuff I left lying around, like just the dust I created. And you know, he's got a helicopter, as you know, we went for lunch and stuff, and he keeps it in there too. And he would just dust it off. He never complained about the dust. And I don't know, like I would complain.
I look back on, so my parents got divorced when I was probably like 12, which was, you know, the typical child trauma of accompanying that. But there were some really cool things about the divorce too. It just opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. And one of the possibilities was aquariums. Because if I asked my father for an aquarium, I knew not to ask my father for an aquarium because it just wasn't even going to be in a conversation. But my mom, yeah, I could have an aquarium, and I could have a big aquarium, like whatever could fit in my room was game. And so I bought this monster aquarium off Craigslist and moved it into the room, and it was just an absolute nightmare in every respect. But my mom, for whatever reason, was so cool about it. And every time I had to go buy some coral off some stranger on Craigslist as like a 14-year-old kid, I couldn't legally drive, so I would need my mom to take me to some guy's house.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd wait outside while I'd go into some stranger's house to go into their aquarium to grab a coral and then bring it out in a Ziploc baggie after giving the guy $40, whatever it was. Yeah. I look back at them like, why did my mom let me do that? And I'm so glad she did. But it's like, what? How did I get away with that?
Yeah, it's crazy what parents just kind of what they're willing to support sometimes, you know.
Yeah, well, and they're not always willing to support stuff too. Unfortunately, a lot of parents, and I'm grateful, and it seems like you've had parents that have just been like, "Hey, you do you, whatever it is, you do you." And
you're not doing drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll buy you some wood, and you can make some sawdust, but at least you're not doing drugs.
So, professionally speaking, have you always been at Blue-Con, or what is your career actually been like?
Yeah, so I've always been at Blue-Con. Like after graduating high school, in that summer between graduating and starting post-secondary, I started working labor at Blue-Con. I was flagging traffic. Well, I was actually working in the shop as like cleaning the floors and washing equipment, stuff like that. And then eventually got onto a job site as a laborer, which is pretty awesome after being cooped up in the shop.
Yeah.
You wanted to go and work where the action really happened. And so between going to school, I would work labor in the summer and get some field experience there, which is awesome. I enjoyed that. And then after that, finishing post-secondary, I went to a technical school here for civil engineering technology. So it's like a 2-year diploma, but it's more of a practical and hands-on approach to civil engineering compared to a degree.
Yeah.
You can't stamp drawings, but you have a pretty good understanding of what's going on, which was awesome.
But ironically, that's probably better than what you get in a degree, because I got the degree.
That's right. Yeah.
There's nothing practical. Nothing practical. It is all theory and is all math. And you get out of school you don't know how to design anything. You actually go learn engineering in the 4 years after you go to school. It is all just math. That's it. That's it. You can't design
Yeah.
anything after.
Yeah. Math and like, I guess teaching you how to learn, I guess, is the other big thing you get out of that. But
Yeah. Yeah. And
you know,
how to multiply everything by like 3 just in case you did your math wrong. Like,
yeah.
all right, this is the number for sure. Just multiply it by 3 just to be
Yeah.
sure, just to be, and we're going to call it a factor of safety to make it sound really cool. But all that is just in case we got our math wrong, we're at
Yeah.
least a little bit better off. But
Yeah.
don't tell anyone.
Yeah. We can sleep at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'll still put the risk on the contractor, though. That's for sure.
100%. Yeah. Why would the engineers take on any risk, man? Were you, as you were starting to then get into being a professional after school, how old are you? Are we similar age?
I'm 27. I think close to you. I think a little younger.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 28. So almost the same. As you started to get into the professional world, were you still doing models on the side? Did it stop at all?
Oh, well, it slowed down a lot for a bit because when I was going to school, I moved out of my parents' house into the city. Stayed with my brother and sister in a little condo there. So, I mean, on weekends and stuff, maybe I'd get home and do a little bit of woodworking. But when you're in post-secondary, man, like I was a nerd. I didn't do much partying or anything fun. I was studying on weekends and trying to get, good marks.
Yeah.
Because that's what I thought mattered the most at the time.
Sure.
And so it slowed down quite a bit. But then even when I was working in the field, you work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, a lot of the days. And so on Sundays or rain days, maybe I'd sneak out to the shop and do a little bit. And then eventually, well, actually, I guess just 2 years ago, I moved into a small town outside of the city, got a house with a garage, and got all my tools at home with me now, which has been amazing because it's like 10 steps out of my back door.
Yeah.
And really, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing right now, driving hour every day to my parents' shop to make a little progress on whatever I'm building.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess to provide people some context on work hours, you're in Alberta. And so when the weather's good, you work.
You make hay when the sun shines. Yeah.
Make hay while sun shines. And then in the winter, you don't really work.
Yeah. Now I'm in the office, estimating and project managing. So, I do work in the winter as well. So that's my full-time gig. And then nights and weekends are mine in the shop.
Yeah.
And that's where the dioramas come to life.
So how did the diorama thing even enter the picture? How did you get the idea for the first one?
Well, so I guess I've experienced in model building with wood, and it was always just wood. And then one day I was sitting at my desk at work, daydreaming as you do. And I was looking at I had a scale, I think it was like a John Deere 200 series excavator model on my desk. Probably got it when I was a kid from the dealer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there looking at it, thinking, look, man, it'd be cool to stage that. Like it was craning in a stick of pipe, or maybe, digging a trench. Maybe I could have other pieces of equipment there, maybe some people. It could be like a miniature construction site. And then, well, what would I put it in? Maybe like a table, maybe a conference table. Uh-huh. So I got this idea in my head, and the snowball just keeps going. And I can see it in my head. And so I go to my dad, who I work for, and I said, hey, Dad, I got this idea for a conference table. It's going to have a scale construction site in the middle with a crew pre-cutting, digging a trench, backfilling, compaction. And then that's going to be in the middle. On the side, it's going to have live edge slabs and concrete legs and a piece of PVC pipe underneath to support it structurally. And it's going to be awesome. And he's like, yeah, Ryan, we got a table and I don't really get it. I think we're okay. I said, no, man, it's a good idea. Let me just draw it out. So I drew up some sketch, and it was probably a pretty poor sketch because I'm not good at that kind of stuff. And showed him this piece of paper and said, hey, listen, this is what it's going to look like. And he's like, yeah, I still don't really get it, but it seems like you get it. So maybe what's it going to cost me? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe $5,000, and the labor's free. I just need to build this thing. So he said, go for it. and that was that really. So it was just, I guess, an idea that popped into my head and um, possessed me, and it just had to, I had to get it out.
So the Blue-Con table, the conference table, was technically your first diorama
My first diorama, my first
table.
conference table I've ever built. I mean, I built a coffee table, but never a conference table. So it was a big undertaking at the time. Like I had no idea how I was going to build it.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen this table, and
Mm-hmm.
I just posted a video of it the other day with you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. And thanks
just
for that, by the way.
you don't have to thank me. It's amazing. But I mean, if you told me, yeah, it was like the 23rd one I built, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But the first one, that's wild because I built my my desk that I still use. I built it in college because I couldn't find a desk for my bedroom at the time that was the right dimensions. I wanted it to be really deep
Mm-hmm.
and really wide, and there just wasn't one out of China that was that size, surprisingly. So I built it myself, and you can tell I built it myself because it looks like shit. And
It's not shit. It's rustic.
it's not rustic. It's just trash, but it still fits in my current house. It still works like a charm. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can't tell this thing was your first shot at it. How I guess where do you even start on something like
Gosh, I don't know. Like the woodworking part for me it wasn't bad. It was easy because it's kind of all the same tools and techniques, just bigger.
that? Yeah.
I just had to buy some big slabs and figure out how to get them flat. Um, and so that part wasn't too bad. But the diorama itself it was like, yeah, it was just a totally different world I've never explored before. So I picked up like some scale railroad magazines, and so because that was like the closest thing I could find that kind of related to what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And so for months I had these magazines beside my bed, and I'd read those in bed and see, oh, okay, well that's how they do the dirt there, and try to pick up some techniques from the pros, because those railroad guys, like they're on another level. Like even
It
compared to my
is.
stuff, like they're
Yeah.
unreal.
It's this whole subculture that you don't
Yeah,
know exists, but it is wild
yeah,
how intricate some of these little mini railroad towns are that they've
yeah.
spent years and years and years and years building out. And I mean, some of them are probably millions of dollars in some of
Oh
these
yeah,
towns. It's
yeah.
crazy.
Or they're in someone's basement and they've built it their whole life, and it's the whole basement. And I don't know what they're gonna do with it. What's the long term plan
Yeah.
there?
God
But I
forbid it
mean,
floods or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it just keeps them content, and they're just a lot of old guys and with some crazy skills.
Sure. But
So
that makes
so there
perfect sense. Huh.
Yeah, and then there's that subculture that I discovered, but also um, the scale diecast community as well, and all the
Yeah.
people who collect models. And I had no idea that any of these existed even on like social media until I
Mm-hmm.
posted my project.
Mm.
And then I start making connections with all these people that collect models and customize models, and some of them build dioramas themselves.
Yeah.
And so it just opened up this whole world of people who work with their hands, slightly different than the construction world of people working with their hands that I was used to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The diorama world's another one where I didn't fully appreciate it until I went with Shay, who I'm going to bring up later, but went with Shay to Switzerland, and we went to the Eberhard Museum. And
Mm-hmm.
the Eberhard collection is one of the biggest diecast collections in the world, if not the biggest. They have, I think,
It's insane.
yeah, and what they have on display is like a small fraction of what they actually have. I feel like they have over 10,000 different models
Holy
in the
cow.
collection. It's insane. And what was really spectacular was walking with Shay and Urs and the other guys that were there that actually knew about these models, and having them explain how rare each one was and how complex each
Mm-hmm.
one was, and how that, like, them basically saying like, yeah, this is one of one. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And they take these real machines and they build these models. Somehow it is witchcraft as far as I'm concerned. that are identical to the actual machine, all themselves, like on their workbench. There's no machinery, there's nothing complex about it, but
at
it's
Eberhard,
incredible.
they build them themselves.
No, well, that's what I mean. Like these die-cast guys, like it's not.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's
nothing
not
elaborate.
No, there's nothing elaborate about it. It's so straightforward and simple if you look at it from like a big picture perspective. But it's so incredible to see all these different models, and then the money some of these things cost is like, to think that some of them are worth what a pretty nice car is worth is, to me, mind-boggling.
Yeah, and people have no idea.
No idea. I
think,
no idea.
maybe it's $100 or something. It's just a small dinky model. It's a toy.
It's a toy.
They call them toys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's another world.
Yeah.
I got to get out there to Switzerland and see that for myself sometime.
Oh, you would love it. It is so. Just visiting Eberhard is worth the trip to Europe. It is such a amazing company. The job sites they have are incredible. The machines they have are incredible. Their shop is one of the craziest shops I have ever seen for any kind of construction company. Their branding is beautiful.
Their branding, yeah.
They have so many work tools in their yard that they have a tower crane on a rail system to pick what work tools they need out of the yard and put them on flatbeds. That's how many work tools they have. They have a tower crane to pick the work tools. It's like, what is this place? And then they have the museum, which is, sure, they have the model collection, which is amazing, but then they also have all of the antique equipment, all restored. That's spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really old company. And so you go into the museum and you follow a path through the history of the business told by the antique equipment that they've restored along the way. Yeah, and it's all amazing. Branded as it used to be branded and everything. It's like, what? How do you have the time and money to do this?
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's nothing else like it. Like
there's nothing else like it.
And
no.
I've only seen like what you've shared and what they share on their social media, because they're kicking ass with that as well. Their social media, like, and their marketing, they're phenomenal company from what I can see.
Yeah. You'd be over the moon. And it's like, you'd walk into the cat dealer and the cat dealer has like an original cat tractor out front. You're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you're like, yeah. And that's the extent of what you really see. But then they're just balling out. Like, here's our full history, all sorts of machines restored. So anyway, so you're building this table. What kind of stuff does anything really stump you on it? Like you just can't figure something out? Or what did you really have to work through?
Well, at that time, I didn't know anything about 3D printers. I didn't have a 3D printer, so everything was made by hand. The sticks of PVC pipe were straws. It took me a long time to find a straw of the right diameter that I could use, because I knew nothing about modeling supplies and that they make styrene tubing of every diameter you could imagine. Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know to look for that. The sticks of reinforced concrete pipe are all PVC that were. The bell and spigot were turned on a wood lathe, and the lifting clutches, drilled in there with a drill. I use little nail heads for the lifting clutches.
Wow.
So you just look at like one little piece at a time, and you just work through like everything else in life. You just pick away at those small problems, and eventually you've got the whole table figured out.
Yeah, but it's a lot of small problems because you have to figure out how to make the dirt look real. You need all the materials, like you just said. Then you need to make the little people. Then you need to figure out how to actually build the ditch, because then it's a three-dimensional plane, or I guess three-dimensional structure you're working off of. And then you have to weather the equipment and make it look legitimate. And then I feel like if memory serves me correct, you have a guy with a hose spraying the water, and you got to figure out how to make water look like water, but in a static environment. And so it's just all these little problems.
Yeah, there's so many, and like even the weathering like of the equipment. So I look at the Blue-Con table now. It's cool, but to me now it's like child's play. And I look at the weathering and everything else, and it's like, okay, well, I don't even want to look at this right now.
I was going to ask that. I was like, do you have to? I mean, because you probably sit at that table a lot. And does it just
Yeah.
frustrate you? You're just looking at it the whole
I
time like, oh, I could do that so much better.
I mean, like in a way, yeah, because I know I could do it better now, but also I got to give myself a little grace because it was my first one. I'd never done
Yeah,
anything else. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, this is where it all started. And it kind of shows where it kind of contrasts to where I am now. And I can look at the difference between the two and feel like I've learned a thing or two. Um, but, maybe
yeah,
eventually I'll pull off the glass and re-weather the equipment and, touch up things here and there when I get some time.
sure. Yeah, so that I think I remember seeing that table in some of your progress. Did you post it on social media? Maybe like on LinkedIn. I feel like I first saw it.
Yeah, LinkedIn is where it really blew up. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember, yeah, you posted some progress, but then what really blew up was the finished product.
Yeah.
It just went
Yeah.
nuts. Like,
Oh, it went nuts. Like tens of thousands of likes and shares and millions of views on LinkedIn, which I
yeah,
don't know what is really considered a view on LinkedIn. If they're scrolling and they stop,
who
I don't
knows?
know how they calculate that. But anyways, it was huge. And I started getting all these other companies saying, "Hey, can you build me one? Can you build me one?"
Mm-hmm.
And so then I thought, okay, well, I guess I could make another one. So I made a short one, 8 feet long, for the DeKalb Pipeline Company in Georgia.
Okay.
Put it in the back of a pickup truck, drove it down there with my sister, sold the pickup truck, set up the table, flew home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Nice. Nice.
yeah.
And still at this time, you've got a full-time day job. I mean, you still have a full-time, or I guess a
Still
day
do.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But it wasn't really, you just wanted to do it for the sake of figuring it out and building something, and you had
yeah.
to charge for it, obviously, but it's not really, I guess, wasn't like, I'm going to make a bunch of money on this from the beginning.
No,
That doesn't seem at all the point.
no. Like you charge. I guess as an estimator now, it's all really the same. It's just
Yeah,
materials and
yeah,
manpower and
yeah.
equipment. So it I definitely didn't charge enough on the first one, but
Sure.
like you said, I was never doing it to make money or get rich. It's just I love to do it,
Yeah,
and these people are going to pay me a bit of money to do it, so well, why not?
yeah. Yeah, so you make that second one. When does Herb call you?
Herb calls me as I'm driving down to deliver the second one,
I see.
and I'd seen the Sergeant had been on my radar for a month or two at that point. I'd seen pictures that you guys posted when you were down at their Back Cove West project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a
I
cool
remember,
one.
yeah, like I
Yeah,
remember seeing that. I went around her office with my iPad, showing everyone, like, man, you guys got to check out what this company Sergeant is doing. Look at this. Look at the size of these culverts. Look at the excavator. Look at the crane.
yeah,
Like, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Just blown away. And then you get to look into the company a bit more, like their culture and everything. It's just like, man, this is a cool company.
sure.
And then all of a sudden I get an email from Herb saying, hey, I like what you do. Let's talk.
Uh huh.
And maybe not word for word, but something like that. And so we get talking a little bit, and he sends me a sketch, and he kind of says like I know it's a big vision and it's a big undertaking, but let me know your thoughts. And Sergeant is turning 100 years old. I think next in a couple of years here,
Mm-hmm.
and so he wanted a table that showed the humble beginnings of his grandfather Herb that started the company with a horse and a wagon to getting their first shovel to where they are now
Sure.
as just this amazing company. And so I remember getting his sketch that he made and started putting notes on it. And I was like, good God, this thing's going to be like 30 feet long, 40 feet long
Yeah.
to fit everything that's in here at the 1 to 50 scale.
Uh huh.
And they don't make these scale models. Where am I going to get them? And
Uh
so I
huh.
decided, okay, well, I'll have to learn how to 3D design and 3D print, and I'm going to have to make these old models. And so my wife and I, we went down to Maine to visit her. We went to the Back Cove West project. We got to go down into the boxes as they're installing one. Saw the guys sign the number of box cover they were putting in. Just amazing.
Yeah.
And we got to go see the original shovel that his grandfather Herb bought in 1926.
Amazing.
And we took measurements of it. I wrote down the measurements, some notes, and then I used that to build a scale model of it for his diorama, which is a timeline of the company.
Yeah. So, and that's where, going back to the scale model stuff, it gets really complicated, because if it's any kind of machine like this, right? 390. All right.
Yeah.
We need a 390, or what was it? The excavator, a 336 that they were using.
336.
Frankenhoe.
Yeah.
We'll get to that one. But you can buy a 336. You can order it, and you can kind of customize it from there. Whereas what was a steam shovel?
Theirs was gasoline. It was converted from gasoline or from steam to gasoline when they bought it.
Amazing. Okay,
yeah.
But still a pretty rudimentary shovel. You don't go to diecast.com and just order one of those for $79.99 because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, and you can't find any. It's such a rare shovel, so you can't find a schematic with all the dimensions and everything you need to build one online. And so that's why I had to go down there and measure it myself to build it.
So how long did it take just to build that shovel?
Oh man, it took me. I can't remember. I think 20 or 30 hours to design it, probably closer to 30, and another good 20 plus to build it. And that's just one little shovel in this 26-foot long table. So the amount of work that went into just that one piece, hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was such an important shovel because it was a replica of the shovel.
Yeah. Yeah, you can skip that. You can be like, we're just gonna. What was the next machine? Let's start there. No, you gotta start from the beginning.
Yeah, and that was actually the first piece I built for that table. I always like to attack the hardest part first, and so I bit off that right off the bat, and I said, okay, well, if I can build this, I can build anything else custom I need to build on this table. And there was a ton that was custom, like the Frankenhoe.
Yeah. Yeah, and so to explain that, the Back Cove project, it was a stormwater project, so stormwater collection, and I just talked about this with Jason Miller yesterday on the podcast. But the problem is you have these combined flows. I'm giving some background here to just explain the project. You know all this, but you have these combined flows of sewer and stormwater. And typically all of that flows to the water treatment plant. There's a water treatment plant just outside of the town of Portland in Maine. And the water treatment plant treats it and then discharges it into the water. But when it rains really heavy or snows and all that melts off, it overwhelms the storage capacity of the treatment plant. And so what happens is you have raw sewage then going into the bay area and to the ocean, which is not a good thing. So the EPA said, hey, everybody needs to clean this up. So what Sargent was doing was establishing underground storage for this stormwater. And part of it, because of the footprint of the project, it was really narrow. They had to put these really wide, the dimensions. What were they, 11 feet by like 5 feet?
Oh man, I should know these.
You built so many of these. You should.
What? I'm just blanking right now, man. But they were like,
I feel like they're roughly around like 11 to 12 feet 12
feet wide. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like 10 feet high.
10 feet. Okay. So
if I went in my filing cabinet, I'd find the shop drawings for the boxes that I got to build them.
So they had to build an enormous box culvert down this road with houses and stuff on one side and beautiful lawns and trees on one side, and then the bay on the other side. And so
they're 20 feet wide, I think.
20 feet
back
wide
to me. I think they're 20 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. I maybe I'm thinking of a different project. But anyway, they had to put these massive box culverts into this very confined area, so they couldn't lay it back at all. They had to have it shored up, and then they had very little room on either side to maneuver. And so they used this amazing gantry crane to pick up the boxes, and then it has wheels on both sides and lower the boxes into place. And then they had what they called the Frankenhoe, which was a 336 standard upper part of the machine, but then the whole undercarriage was then spread and the track sat on both sides of the excavation.
Yeah, it had a span of like 35 feet, something like that.
35 feet.
Yeah.
Chell got to see the machine and take pictures. I never saw it, unfortunately.
Oh, you never did, hey? Okay.
No, sadly.
But and something cool about that is that, so the original design, because it's all about volume, right? With those storage tanks.
Yeah.
The original design was, it was a single cell box culvert, but it was about twice as long. And Sargent said, okay, well, to go this deep to install these boxes, we've got to shore it up, no matter what. So what if we work with the precast manufacturer and get these custom twin cell box culverts designed to double the width and half the length.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the same volume, but we're putting in half as much sheet piling along the road.
Yeah.
And so they increased the width of this excavation, and then to dig it, they said, well, how are we going to dig down there? And one guy says, well, I've seen for getting a custom undercarriage that will span the excavation. And so they got that idea from the operator of how to build that hoe.
Amazing.
And then to dig that depth, like they were like 30 to 40 feet deep. Well, standard 336 won't reach it. And they use a 390 on another portion of that project that was deeper. But you can't put a 390 on this spanned undercarriage because it's too heavy. Mm-hmm. So what do? They get a custom stick, an extra stick that goes on the end to get that extra depth with a 336. So just like so much creativity and value engineering in that project. And like, it was just, I was so happy to be able to build a model of that. Like when I started talking with her, I said, I sure hope you want to include that Back Cove West project in here, because I need to build that.
Yeah. Well, and the most, the amazing thing is they have a fab shop and they built that machine themselves.
They did.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm correct on that. They built that machine themselves. So they basically did what you did, but just one of one scale.
Yeah, exactly.
they basically just had to create it from scratch, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, they had the hard part. They had to figure out the engineering and everything. I just had to look at it and copy it in 1:50 scale. So my part was easy.
Yeah. Physics wasn't as much of an issue for you as it was then.
Yeah.
So that that is how the table ends. It's the shovel at the very beginning, and then that amazing culvert project with the crane and the Frankenhoe at the other side. Yeah. And then you have all sorts of stuff in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the evolution of equipment. You've got all the old Euclid trucks and the Northwest shovel, the cable shovel, and then you move into the the 70s, 80s, where hydraulic excavators become a thing and they overtake the rope shovels. So just showing that evolution over time, and then finishing with GPS equipment, building a runway at the modern end with a drone, 1:50 scale drone flying overhead.
I liked that. I saw that. Yeah, that was a nice touch. Very well done.
I thought you guys might appreciate that.
Oh yeah. No, if it was our model, the drone would be crashed somewhere. It wouldn't be in the air. You wouldn't have had to figure that out.
Yeah, there's another one underneath a tire somewhere.
Yeah,
that's the Build Wit drone.
Yeah, perfect. How much research did you have to do to get all this right? Like how much of building a table like this is just you researching, or you doing math or sketching, not actually building the table?
It's different on every one. Like the Blue-Con one, I basically just used my field experience and knowledge of how to install deep utilities to build that.
Sure.
And so that was easier. The Sargent one was it was a totally different beast, because I had to research vintage equipment and old equipment and what was used at these times and how was it used and what was the safety like back then, or the lack of safety. You didn't wear hard hats and reflective vests back in the 50s.
Yeah.
But they actually have this book. Sargent had a full biography done on the grandfather who started Sargent in his lifetime. He kept detailed journals every day. And so they used those and created this book with pictures that basically told the story of the company. And so I have that on my bookshelf, and it's tabbed and marked up. And I would take pictures from that and try to extrapolate from those to build the model. Not replicating, but just taking inspiration and all that to put into this model. And Herb and I would go back and forth with different designs. I would say, okay, well, based on what you want here, it's going to be this big. That means the table's going to be this long. You say, okay, well, it's a bit too long. What can we cut out? So it's a real collaborative process the whole way.
Wow.
Just figuring out, what to include to properly tell the story.
Yeah. Once you get this thing together, how much time did you spend on this from start to finish? Like, how many months did it take?
It was about a year.
About a year.
And about 1,250 hours.
1,250 hours.
That's a lot of nights and weekends.
I was going to say, that's all nights and weekends hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like 60% of a full-time job.
Yep.
Just nights.
I don't really have a life outside of this, Aaron. That's
no, you can't.
That's everything.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I was so curious how many hours you spent on it. So you get this all together, and the table was divided in 3?
The diorama was in 4 segments. And then the slabs themselves were divided into 4 as well, I guess. There's 4 slabs, like 4 quadrants, I guess, that connect in the middle.
Because how long did the table end up being?
It was 26 feet.
26 feet.
Yeah.
And so, you can't put the thing on a flatbed and drive it to Maine from Calgary. And so you have to figure out how to fit in. You put it in a U-Haul, right? Box truck?
Yeah. I built crates, put them in a U-Haul, and my wife and I drove it down across the United States to Maine.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that was about a couple months before our wedding. And so that was a true test. Is this really going to work out? And we concluded after that journey that it was a good decision.
Those U-Hauls suck to drive.
There's no cruise control.
Yeah. Aren't they limited too on speed?
If they are, mine wasn't bad. I could always get to the speed limit.
Okay. Yeah, because I drove one time from Arizona to Texas, and I couldn't get to the speed limit. I think it was limited at 70, and in Arizona, speed limit 75, which was frustrating. Okay. And then the other thing, and this was the same thing that was true with our RV this summer, is there is no sound deadening.
No.
And so it is so loud. So loud.
Well, get this. So, like, we're driving, and it's either our Apple Watches or our phones. They're listening to how loud the area is that you're in. Yeah. And if you're being overexposed to a loud environment. And they were constantly giving us warnings that it was too loud and we were ruining our ears.
You need ear protection.
We would drive with our AirPod noise canceling headphones in for a lot of the way because it really is just so loud.
Yeah, I did the RV this summer. I had noise canceling headphones on for most of the time because it's like a safety thing for me. Like, I can hear better with these on.
Yeah.
I can't just driving this thing. Yeah. How long did it take to set it up once you were at Sargent?
It was about 2 days, solid day and a half. And then we had kind of a grand reveal type get together with everyone in the office, some of his family. My parents actually surprised me and came down there as well.
That's awesome.
To see it, the curtain pulled or the sheet pulled off the table. So
and
it's pretty amazing.
I assume the feedback on that one was pretty spectacular.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're so happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just even on the internet, I mean, just I feel like the amount of attention you've got with that table is just spectacular.
Oh yeah, it's mind blowing. And
yeah,
I mean, I post a lot. Maybe I annoy some people, but if you don't like it, you don't have to follow. But yeah, like I posted probably hundreds of posts on that table in the process just because the scope was so big. Tons of attention.
Yeah.
And then it's crazy.
After that, do you have a bunch of people calling you?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I got a long list of people who are interested, and even like, because it's a side hustle and my schedule's unpredictable, so I just commit to one project at a time.
Yeah.
So I have a waiting list, and I put people on my wait list, and if I get an opening, I'll reach out and maybe we'll make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
but it's just one project at a time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know who the next one's for.
I do know who the next one's for. And I saw that and I couldn't be more excited. I was like, that's going to be so cool. So cool. Because their equipment is awesome and where they work is awesome.
Yeah. It just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When you know the company, you know Shay.
Yeah.
He's a big model collector himself.
Yeah. Have you did you go out there?
No, I haven't been out there.
Oh, you haven't been out there.
Yeah,
So you
I
haven't.
want to.
Yeah, in his basement, speaking of models and basements, he has that. And I feel like you've maybe weathered some stuff for him on that model.
I haven't weathered any of his stuff, but I've built him a few custom pieces.
Yeah,
a grout mixer. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like he said you were doing something for it. But yeah, he has this remarkable shoring diorama that he's worked on for a very long time. And it's probably the nicest small model I've seen. The thing is beautiful. But then he now has a kid and he's got plenty on his plate. So I'm sure the model building is not first and foremost for him. So seeing him working with you is so exciting.
Yeah. And this is Shay Stutzman.
Yes.
Stutzman Gerbaz, for all those who are wondering.
Yeah, in Aspen, Colorado, the guy with all the wacky equipment.
Yeah. So like you said, he's a really talented model builder himself.
Yeah.
And he's got like a crazy eye for detail.
Yes.
And so, like, first of all, I'm honored to be able to build something for him, but also I know the expectations are very high, which I'm comfortable with. But it's not like building a diorama or model for anyone else, just anyone. Like, this is a guy who he's got an eye for the finest details.
Yeah, but but the expectations are high, but that's so cool at the same time because he is going to appreciate it unlike anybody else because he can fully understand what it takes, the skill level it takes to actually get it to that point. Yeah. Like even in his basement too, like the Cat 6090 die cast model. I want one so bad, but I don't have that kind of disposable income. Like they're not cheap. But typically you buy that thing and it in itself is a statement piece because that's a very rare model, very expensive model. And it's just huge. It's a giant machine. It's the biggest hydraulic shovel in the world. That's not good enough for him. He makes this little diorama setup where it's a crew assembling the shovel. So he's got the crane and the guys on the man baskets and the bucket coming in on a truck and the front parts disassemble. You're like, who does this? Who does this? This is so cool.
I've seen pictures of that setup he's got. It's just and he's got his the Stutzman logo on everything.
Yeah.
Because his branding is on point as well.
Yeah,
but, like you say, like it's always more fulfilling and rewarding to build something for someone who appreciates it.
Sure.
And Herb was like that, and Shay he's the same. He's right up there.
So what did he request? I mean, what can you, I guess, disclose about this one?
Well, we're still kind of working on the design, but we know part of the scope, at least, is going to be a crew working on a water main replacement on Main Street in Aspen, in front of the Hotel Jerome, which is a very historic, iconic hotel in Aspen.
Yeah,
and he loves that hotel, and I can see why now because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So
I think he got married there.
He did. Yeah. There's a picture of him with it's like an old D7, D6 or D7.
Yeah.
With a wooden cabin, and he's got, I think, rubber or something on the track pad so the cleats don't wreck the road. Like that's how you get married.
Yeah.
That's a carriage.
Yeah.
So on this project, so something new that's different than the last ones is getting into the designing and construction of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started that project by building that hotel. And I've kind of finished the front facade for the hotel already. And that's a big learning curve too, like how to build a scale building. And there's people out there that's all they do, and they're experts at it.
Sure.
Like architects and people like that. So I try to learn as much as I can from them, and then just trial and error.
Yeah, and I feel like over the past few years, you've gotten a lot of new fancy tools.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, you've gotten some, like, you're reinvesting back in your side hustle. I
Oh
I
yeah,
know
like
that much.
I don't pocket a lot of cash here.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I
goes
don't
all
think.
back into the shop.
Yeah, there's not a boat that's competing for space in the shop. There's
No,
just more tools.
more
Um,
tools.
but
Yeah,
it seems like you're almost out of room. But yeah, you've got some
yeah,
pretty sweet stuff, like that laser engraver that I know you
yeah,
used for that hotel front.
yeah, yeah. And I bought the laser for this project actually, but now it's like anything. You get a tool for a certain project, even in construction. If we want to relate it to that, you buy this big excavator for a given project, and then you find a million other uses and projects for it down the road. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the same situation here. But yeah, getting more technology in the shop, lasers, CNC equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Not taking away the craftsmanship, but just complementing it is how I see it.
sure.
Like
Yeah,
GPS and equipment,
yeah.
it's just technology and tools and helps get the job done better.
Well, because even with a 3D printer, you have to still design what you're creating and still have to understand how the 3D printer builds what you're creating. And then
Yeah,
you have to, it doesn't oftentimes give you the perfect thing. You have to maybe polish it up a little bit. Then you have to paint it. There's still so much there. It's not
yeah,
this easy button. Hey, I want construction worker that's 53 years old, slightly overweight, has been smoking for the past 8 years. Like, doesn't work that way. You got to make that
yeah.
yourself.
You gotta design every little detail intentionally. Like
Yeah.
nothing just comes to be. Like it all has to be intentional.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you put herb in the diorama?
Oh, I've got a lot of herbs in the diorama.
Oh.
I've got well, I've got like um Herb E. Sargent, the grandfather. I've got him numerous times from when he was a teenager shoveling sawdust. That's where he started, shoveling sawdust to sell for ice boxes. Didn't have
Wow.
freezers back then in the early
Wow.
1900s.
Yeah.
I've got him like growing up in different phases of the diorama. When we hit the 70s and 80s in the trees, I've got the Herb that we know standing in the trees as a little boy, looking down at the equipment, thinking, "Hey, maybe someday I'm going to join those guys and run some equipment and get into this construction world." So he enters there, and then there's another one of him, more grown up, standing beside his grandfather, looking at this quarry and looking at the equipment with his grandfather giving him tips,
Wow.
stuff like that. So
Wow.
he's in
That's
there a couple
cool.
times.
That's
Yeah.
very cool. That's so cool. With the one in Aspen, you're gonna have to make sure to put in some moms drinking champagne at, like, 10 a.m. A Bentley for sure. You're
Oh,
gonna have to
Bentley.
put.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need a Bentley. Yeah, it is a Gucci store. That
The Gucci
and,
store. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm
I need
joking
that.
about this, but it's not a joke. Like, the last time I went to see Shay, he was working across the street from the Gucci store.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most ridiculous place.
They're probably understanding. They say, "Hey, listen, this construction's got to get done. Let these construction people work as long as they need to, make as much
Yeah.
noise. It's got to be
Yes.
done. We
It's a
understand."
very understanding crowd. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But that, like, they've been doing it there for decades and decades and decades and decades. So they know how to do it. They know how to play the game, which is like a big, not the competitive advantage for them, but certainly a competitive advantage, because they just know how to do work very, very well in Aspen, which is
Yeah.
not a market most people could work in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tight, and they've got the specialized equipment to do it. They've got, like you had shown in some of your videos, they've got working in this tight alley beside these stores. They have a pizza wheel for the excavator to cut the
Yes.
asphalt
Yes.
instead of saw cutting it and making dust and noise.
Yeah.
So they've got the right tools to work in that area.
Well, I'm hoping, I know my photos came into use, or our photos came into use on the Sargent one, and I'm hoping my photos can come into use on the latest one. And so
They absolutely will. Yeah,
I
you bet.
am honored to be a very small piece of this in providing you some quality photographs of what you're building.
I'll have to stick a small Aaron in there with an orange hard hat, taking a picture.
Yeah, no, don't do that. I don't belong in Aspen. That would just be out of place.
Uh, but
Um,
I guess kind of going back to what that one's going to include. So we have the water main replacement. That was the original scope. We
yeah,
might expand it to show some of the other things they do because deep utilities is just one small piece of the puzzle.
yeah.
So yeah, we'll show a little more in there, I think.
If you don't expand it to them digging underneath a historic house that's propped up on jacks, timbers, yeah, I'm going to be disappointed because
that's in the works there, and it's
good.
in discussion. Yeah.
Good. Because that is one of the most spectacular things I've seen. Everybody, they always ask me, like, what's the craziest stuff you've seen? And like, yeah, the big stuff like Fort McMurray. It's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Or seeing you guys doing the pre-cut and then, the triple
Mm-hmm.
3 lines right in the same trench. I mean, all that's spectacular, but some of the small stuff is cool too. Like seeing a mini excavator underneath a historic house that's been propped up and had a 30-foot excavation dug underneath it in downtown Aspen. You're like, what is this? This is wild.
Yeah. And the original design too, it had a their new custom D1 kind of doing the road gravel base prep.
Yes.
And there was no track loader in the original design, and that would just be a crime if there was no track loader on a Stutzman diorama.
It would be.
So we're working on that, and we're going to find a way to get one in there.
Good. All right. I'm really happy to hear this. Yeah, he got. That was the trip to Switzerland with him where he got the idea for the dozer with the excavator pads because we were watching a D6 with those pave on a runway. Pave asphalt.
Oh, in Zurich there. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then Shay's like, wait a minute, that would be way better than a grader for what we do. And then fast forward 2 years later, I'm out on a job. They're in Basalt and there's the dozer kicking ass, doing its thing, finish grading for paving. And I'm like, that's actually just so brilliant. It works. It's perfect. Yeah. And then you put it on the internet and everybody's like, oh, that's so fucking dumb. You're like, all right. People with no imagination, you just stay in your own little world, go back under your rock and let people with big imaginations just do what they do, like Shay, because they're doing just fine.
Yeah. And I find that just to kind of speak to the trolls and stuff on the internet and people, in different regions in construction, companies do things differently. The soil's different.
Yeah.
They just have their different way of doing things. And so when I built a diorama, say for Blue-Con or anyone else, you always get people commenting, oh, well, why are they doing that? Or, oh, where's your trench box? Safety's no joke, Ryan. Like on the Blue-Con one, I got so many complaints about the slope, but up here, with cohesive clay soil, you can slope your ditch at like 30 degrees from the vertical plane. And so on that one, the Blue-Con one, I had my iPhone with the inclinometer on it. I would put it on the slope and I would make sure it's at 33 degrees from the vertical plane. And based on our soil conditions here, it is safe. But people all over the world don't see things that way.
It's so funny.
So
it's just
you never get criticism on your stuff, so you wouldn't really get it.
I just chuckle though, because it is so narrow-minded. It's just like them criticizing that shows how little they know, which is the irony. Yeah. It's like by making this comment, you're saying that you don't really understand what's going on here. And I love it when people correct somebody or something and they're completely wrong, but they're so sure about it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. When they're going out of their way to correct you, you're like, no, like, were you there? Have you ever visited this project and talked to the project manager? Because I have, jackwagon. But even like the differences with what Blue-Con does, I was amazed. And this was stuff I hadn't even thought of. In Arizona, a water line is 4 feet below the surface. And why would you ever go beyond that? It doesn't make sense. Waste of time, waste of money. You put your sewer in, you put your storm in, and then you do your water on top of that. You guys have to put water way down in the ground. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why would you do that? And you look at me, it wasn't you, but I quickly figured this out. Like, listen, dummy, there's something called winter up here in Canada. And with winter, things get cold. and things freeze and our ground freezes. So we have to put the water line that far down. It's like, oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I get it. I see what's going on here.
Yeah. Lots of closed minds out there.
Yeah. Well, I wholeheartedly appreciate what you've got going, and I cannot wait to see this next model because it will be a work of art. And I hope to one day visit Sargent's new HQ to see the last piece of art. And maybe I'll catch you in Calgary this summer. I might be up there. I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah. Would love to.
Hey, listen, man,
around.
I appreciate your support for having me on here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about who would be great this year, and I've been liking your stuff like crazy for a long time now. It's like, oh, I need to have him on to talk about dioramas and tables and
fake construction sites.
But that's what's so funny is, you go onto these job sites and they're very intimidating because everybody, is big, typically pretty burly, big beards or big elaborate mustaches and especially in, states like maybe some tattoos, some guys are smoking. And at least me, I would show up 18, 19, 20 years old, like this little kid, like bring your kid to work day. And everybody's like, who the hell are you? But then you realize through like a table like this or a diorama that these are all just big kids. Everybody just is so enamored by these fake construction sites or these Lego models or these die-cast models. It's so funny. It just breaks down all of those barriers. And you're like, oh yeah, everybody's just like a big kid. And everybody thinks this is cool. Yeah, everybody's a big kid.
Yeah. Like when we have people come in for like safety orientations or interviews in our office, we always go to the conference room with the table. Sure. And just the excitement and like it just draws all the passion in these people. Or they'll come in with their families and they'll point to the guy spraying the water and they're showing their kids, they're like, look, this is me. This is what I do right here. And you can see it and it's tangible.
Yeah.
It just gets people so excited. And I was thinking too, like aside from like construction and maybe farming, what other industry has people who are so passionate about what they do that they collect skill models of the tools and equipment that they use to make their living?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Like people who work in finance, they don't I guess they collect money, but not skill models of calculators.
Rolexes. Yeah. But I think that's what's so special about building stuff is it's tangible. You can see it. It's in the real world, whereas so many careers and jobs are on this thing that is the computer, and you can't show this thing that is the computer to anybody else, your kids, your family, or your friends. It doesn't, because it doesn't really exist in a lot of ways. And that's what's so, I think, unique about construction and what gives a lot of people that sense of pride that just isn't in most other industries.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, cool. I really appreciate you taking some time. I'm glad this was a good day to do it, since it's miserably cold outside for you.
minus 40 for everyone out there. And I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, but isn't minus 40 where Celsius and Fahrenheit?
It's just about
line
there.
Up?
Yeah.
It's close, eh?
It's close.
So I think bloody cold.
It's just miserable no matter Fahrenheit or Celsius. I've had to I'm dating a woman on the metric system, and I'm on the imperial system.
Good for you. This is a good move, Aaron. This is a good thing.
Which is really had to, because like when you're not together, what's one topic of conversation? Weather. Like how is it there? Like you're working outside. Like is it hot? Is it cold? And I've had to figure out the conversion between Fahrenheit and Celsius in my head. And then I've tried to on my social posts too, because I've realized, you especially in America, Canada is probably pretty similar. We're in our world, like we don't really get out all that much, especially Americans. I feel like people assume that the world is America, and they forget that there's other stuff outside. And America is 4% of the global population, and that number alone is like, oh yeah, okay, so there's a lot more out there. And so I just assume, it's just a bunch of guys that live around here that follow along. But the audience, and your audience, I think too, is global. And so whenever I say a statistic or a number, I'm now trying to convert it for everybody so that people, no matter where they are, can at least follow along. I'm trying to do it for them. And people have really appreciated it, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's very considerate of you.
Yes.
As it's funny in my wood shop, like we're metric up here, but in my wood shop, I bounce between the two. I have tape measures, and they're both imperial and metric.
Yeah.
And here's how smart I am. If I'm measuring something and it's closer to a nice even number in imperial, I'll go with imperial. If it's closer to a nice even number in metric, I'll go with metric for that measurement.
Well done.
Yeah.
They both have something to. They leave something to desire. I feel like
I don't think so. Yeah.
Any system's perfect, but metric makes a lot more sense. Well, thanks again for coming on. If people want to follow you on social media, where do they go for that?
Instagram and Facebook, I guess, Instagram is my biggest platform. Ryan Haasen Woodworks. Haasen's with 2 A's, Haasen.
Okay.
You'll see me. I'm the scale diorama table guy.
Not hard to find. So okay. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Good chatting.